The war ended 8 years ago, but sometimes I still woke up in the middle of the night expecting the sky to burn. Back then, the world had learned we were not alone in the most violent way possible. The alien fleets appeared without warning, massive ships that hung above the clouds like silent moons. For weeks, no one knew if they came as conquerors or explorers. That uncertainty didn't last long. When the first cities burned, humanity fought back. I was a field medic assigned to the Northern Front, a frozen wasteland of ruined towns and shattered forests where both human soldiers and alien warriors clashed daily. My job was simple: keep people alive long enough to get them off the battlefield. I never expected that one of the lives I saved would come back to change mine forever. The day I found her, it was the coldest night of that winter. The wind screamed through the broken buildings like a living thing. Our evacuation convoy had been ambushed earlier, and I was moving through the snow alone, searching for survivors. That's when I heard something. A faint metallic scrape. At first I thought it was one of our soldiers trying to move. But when I followed the sound behind a collapsed wall, I froze. An alien warrior lay half buried in the snow. She wore dark armor cracked in several places, glowing faintly with dying blue light. One of her limbs was twisted badly, and frost clung to the edges of her helmet. Her species had been humanity's enemy for months. We called them Virelians, tall, powerful beings with pale silver skin and eyes that glowed like distant stars. Most soldiers would have finished her off immediately, but I was a medic. And medics are cursed with a terrible instinct. When we see someone dying, we try to save them, even if they're supposed to be the enemy. Slowly, cautiously, I approached. Her helmet visor flickered open. 2 glowing violet eyes stared up at me. I expected rage. Instead, I saw exhaustion and pain. She raised one hand weakly toward a broken weapon beside her, but she didn't have the strength to lift it. For a long moment, we simply stared at each other while the snow fell between us. Then I sighed. Yeah, I muttered to myself. This is probably the worst decision I've ever made. I knelt beside her. She tensed as I touched the cracked plates of her armor, but she didn't fight when I began sealing the wound along her side with a medical injector. The alien language was impossible for me to understand then, but I still remember the quiet sound she made. It wasn't anger. It was surprise. A strange truce. It took me 3 hours to stabilize her injuries. Her physiology was similar enough to human anatomy that my equipment worked, with some improvisation. When I finally helped her sit up, she studied me carefully. "You human," she said slowly in broken English. Her voice was deeper than I expected, calm and steady despite everything. "Last time I checked," I replied. She looked down at the bandages covering her side. "You save enemy." "Yeah," I said. "Don't make it a habit." For a moment she said nothing. Then she removed a small metal insignia from her armor and held it out to me. "Name," she said, touching her chest. "Kareth." I hesitated before taking it. "Daniel," I answered. We sat there in the snow like 2 soldiers who had forgotten they were supposed to hate each other. Eventually, I helped her to her feet. Her ship had crashed several kilometers away. If she stayed there, the cold would kill her before morning. So, I did something even more ridiculous than saving her. I helped her reach the forest. Before she disappeared into the trees, Kareth turned back once. She placed a hand over her heart, some kind of salute. Then she vanished into the storm. That was the last time I expected to see her. Years later, the war ended 2 years after that night. Humanity didn't win, but we didn't lose either. Both sides had taken too many casualties, and eventually a fragile peace treaty was signed. The Virelians withdrew their fleets, leaving behind a handful of diplomatic outposts and trade stations. Life slowly returned to normal. I left the military and moved to a quiet rural town far from the old battlefields. Peace felt strange at first, but eventually it felt good. Until the night someone knocked on my door. It was raining heavily, and the road outside my cabin was empty. When I opened the door, my heart nearly stopped. Standing on my porch was a tall figure wearing a long dark cloak, silver skin, glowing violet eyes.
"Daniel," she said.
I recognized the voice instantly. Kareth. She looked exactly the same. Alien physiology aged differently, but 8 years should have changed something. Instead, she stood there like a memory, walking out of the past. But she wasn't alone. Beside her stood a small child. The girl peeked out from behind Kareth's cloak with wide, curious eyes. Her skin shimmered faintly silver, but her eyes, they were human brown. And when she looked up at me, she smiled brightly. "Father." The word hit me like a grenade. "What?" I said, completely stunned. The girl ran forward and wrapped her arms around my waist like she had known me her entire life. Kareth watched quietly. "She has waited many cycles to meet you," she said calmly. I stared at the child hugging me. "Kareth," I said slowly, "you're going to need to explain this." The truth. Inside the cabin, the girl sat happily at my kitchen table eating cookies while Kareth told me the most unbelievable story I had ever heard. Apparently, during the war, Varelian soldiers were injected with emergency genetic stabilizers designed to repair severe injuries. When I treated Kareth's wounds using human medical technology, something unexpected happened. The combination of alien and human biotech triggered a rare phenomenon in her species, a biological adaptation. In simple terms, her body used my DNA as a template to stabilize itself, which meant that when she later had a child, the child carried both our genetics. I stared at her in silence. "You're telling me," I said slowly, "that I accidentally became a father because I patched you up?" "Yes," Kareth said calmly. "That seems extremely unfair." She tilted her head. "Unfair? I didn't even get a vote." At the table, the little girl waved. "My name is Lyra," she said proudly. I rubbed my face. "This is insane." Kareth folded her arms. "In my culture, the one whose genetics create life shares responsibility." I groaned. "Of course they do." Lyra hopped off the chair and walked over. She looked up at me with bright, curious eyes. "Mother says you saved her," she said. "That means you are brave." I didn't know what to say to that. So instead, I asked the question that had been bothering me since the door opened. "Why now?" Kareth was silent for a moment. Then she said quietly, "Because someone is hunting her." The threat. Peace between our species hadn't ended the resentment. There were factions on both sides that believed the war should never have stopped. And Lyra represented something dangerous. A hybrid. Proof that humans and Varelians could share blood. To extremists, that was unacceptable. A militant Varelian faction had discovered her existence. They believed hybrids were an abomination. "They will not stop," Kareth said. "And you came here because you are the only human I trust." I looked down at Lyra, who was currently examining my dog with scientific fascination. "Great," I muttered. 8 years of peaceful retirement. And now interstellar extremists were apparently coming to my house. "Daniel," Kareth said quietly, "I would not ask if there were another path." I sighed. Of course she wouldn't. Because deep down, I already knew the answer. I had saved her once before, and apparently that decision had consequences. When the hunters arrived, they came 3 nights later. A stealth ship appeared above the forest without warning. I saw the lights in the sky and knew immediately. Kareth stepped onto the porch beside me. "They are early," she said. "Of course they are," I replied. Lyra peeked through the window. Are those bad aliens? Yes, I said. Very bad. Kareth activated a compact weapon that unfolded from her gauntlet. Stay inside, she told Lyra. The girl nodded reluctantly. Then the ship descended through the trees. 3 armored warriors stepped out. They looked just like Kareth, but their armor was black and marked with crimson symbols. The leader pointed directly at the cabin. You carry the hybrid, he said coldly. Return it. Kareth stepped forward. Never. The warrior's glowing eyes shifted toward me. A human. His voice carried pure contempt. You would protect this abomination? I shrugged. Honestly, I'm still trying to process the whole fatherhood thing. Then I picked up the old rifle leaning against the wall. But yeah, I added, I guess I would. For a moment the forest was completely silent. Then the warrior raised his weapon. Kill them. The battle that followed was short, but brutal. Kareth moved like lightning. Her blade flashed through the darkness as she intercepted the first attacker, deflecting energy fire with impossible speed. I stayed behind cover, firing whenever one of them got too close. Years away from the battlefield hadn't erased my instincts. One of the warriors crashed through the porch railing and slammed into the yard. Kareth disarmed him in seconds. The leader fought harder, but eventually even he fell to one knee. Kareth held her blade at his throat. Leave, she said coldly. You have failed. The warrior stared at her with hatred. You defend weakness. No, she replied. I defend the future. After a long moment, the surviving attackers retreated to their ship. Within seconds, it vanished into the night sky. Silence returned to the forest. Kareth lowered her weapon slowly. Behind us, the cabin door opened. Lyra stepped outside. Did we win? Kareth looked at her. Then she nodded. Yes. A new kind of family. Later that night we sat together on the porch. Lyra had fallen asleep inside. The stars above the forest were quiet again.
You should go, I said.
They may return. Kareth shook her head. They will not risk failure again. For a while neither of us spoke. Then she said quietly, she deserves to know both worlds. I understood what she meant. Lyra wasn't just human. She wasn't just Varelian either. She was something new. I leaned back in the chair. Well, I said slowly. I guess if I'm already a surprise father, Kareth looked at me. I might as well learn how to do the job properly. For the first time since I met her years ago, the alien warrior smiled. And inside the cabin, the little girl who called me father slept peacefully. The war had once brought us together by accident. But now, maybe we were something else entirely. Not enemies. Not strangers. A family.